Well, it's time to play a game theorist and look deep into a video game, look at all the lore and history and all the secrets hidden away, and try to come up with some crazy, far-fetched theory that may be somewhat accurate or may not even be close to the truth. But this is the lore video of GTFO and all that we know up to Rundown 3 and what there might be to discover in the future. Now, to start off, I want to apologize for how late this video is. I realize that recently I've been a little bit slacking on these videos and trying to get them out within 4 days. But I've been really busy recently and I've been having a few computer issues and just stuff going wrong here and there, so it's been taking me a bit longer to get these videos out, and I do apologize for that. I will be trying to get back into the 4-day system, and hopefully the next video after this one will be released 4 days from now. Also, when it comes to this video in general, I just want to make sure it's clear that everything I'm going to be talking about can either be found in the GTFO wiki, the GTFO Discord, stuff that you can find in-game, and then my own theories. I will make sure I specify when it's my theory and when it's actually something factual, that way I don't confuse people with what I think might be true to what actually is true, or at least what's been revealed to us. But other than that, I have nothing I need to preface, so let's get straight into this video. But just like learning the basic mechanics of this game, there's a lot to look at, and I think the best place to start is the very beginning, back to the earliest date we can find long before we enter into the complex in the first place. Starting off, let's talk about the complexes. We currently know of 2, but who were they built by? You may recognize the name, it's Santonian Industries. The main reason you may recognize the name is because they're everywhere in the game. The lockers you open have their symbol on them, as well as a bunch of other things throughout the facilities. But besides that, there's really not too much that's actually known about these guys. There is a website that is linked to the wiki page, but the only thing we can really gauge from that is that one of the characters we play as might have some connection with Santonian Industries. But other than that, we're pretty much left in the dark. There's also a ton of minor companies which the names follow: McAllister Aggregates, Rockford, Nyoxus, Tecma Defense, Alpho, Cornell Industries, Omnico, Control Technologies, and Shirano. Now, a lot of these companies we have very little information for, mainly that they're concrete suppliers and they're people who worked on building the facilities. I think the main importance with all of this, though, is why so many? Or maybe not why so many, but how so many? Obviously, you would need a lot of workers, especially if you're building multiple complexes. So, where is the money coming from to actually pay for these giant facilities? After all, it's not cheap to build something the size of these things, much less making them completely underground. So there must be an income for all the money. But hold on to that thought, because that is something we will discuss later in the video. The first of the 2 compounds that we know about, and we actually have been confirmed that they exist, is in Garganta, Brazil. This compound, there's not too much known about it, but something I want to point out that you need to keep in mind is Brazil is one of the manufacturers, or at least Brazilian market has Iridium in it. So just keep in mind that Iridium is something that can be purchased from Brazil. But the main 2 things I want to talk about are 2 emails that we find in the levels. The first one is from R3D1, which you can see here on screen. This one is between a man by the name of Andrew Clinton, B035, and Jansen Davies, A001. The date, September 5th, 2049. This is not much to it, just simply saying, sorry for the delay, crazy busy. Blueprints are attached, estimated construction time is 20 months, drilling in August 2050. So, this is giving us a time period of a facility being built that will probably take about 20 months, and when the drilling will start. Why do I think it has to do with Garganta, though? In the attachment up above, you see G_schematics. I believe the G stands for Garganta, but other than that, I have no proof behind it. But the next email that follows sort of also makes me believe that really is the one. This one could be found from a collection of all the Rundown 2 emails. This email is a compilation across pretty much every single level, and it reads as follows between Andrew Clinton again to Jansen Davies. And this is in August 1st, 20-something. I believe the year is going to be 2051. The main reason for that is because think back to how it said construction in 20 months. It would make sense if this was 2051 due to the fact that this is going to be talking more about the construction, which I won't read through all of it, so if you want to read all of it, pause here. But basic summary of it is saying that the external walls have been poured, and it'll be about 8 weeks before we could start drilling the primary shaft. So this would sort of be, it's a little bit off the mark, but in about 20 months, it would make sense for this to be 2051. But it might be later, or it might be even as early as 2050, although I doubt it. Going through all of this, the first portion is basically talking about a flooding accident that occurred, and that when they write the report, they're going to indicate it happened at the mining operation and not at Garganta. So that makes us, or shows us anyway, that they want to keep this hidden. They don't want them to know about the facility site at Garganta. It also keeps going down talking about the people from McAllister Aggregates, one of the companies I named earlier, is asking a few too many questions to the comfort of these people. This also goes to show that the people working on these facilities don't exactly know why they're building them. They don't know the purpose behind them, and that they're either being lied to or just told it's not any of your business. It goes further on to talk about both the Neoxus and Rockford also being people who have been helping in building these facilities, and how both of them are just as useful and don't ask nearly as many questions. It ends off with Andrew talking to Jansen about, if you intend to visit the site, let me know so I can make the appropriate arrangements. There's a lot of people here, and while security is tight, I want it to be tighter in case you come to see. This also gives us another idea that Andrew and Jansen are either co-buddies and they work together, or maybe Andrew is somebody who works underneath Jansen and works for him. It also shows that Jansen might be somebody who's well known, or at least very important in all of this. Sort of like how the president, if he's to fly somewhere, there's a ton of security that needs to be heightened to make sure an assassination attempt isn't done. Well, it could be the same thing with Jansen, to the point where he's so important and well known that he has to be careful, because otherwise he might get assassinated if people know where he's going, or it might be a thing of maybe he'll be followed and then people will discover the facility. Not much is really known about that, but this is all we have to go off of for the Garganta facility currently. The other facility is in the Yucatan Peninsula, in the same area where the Chicxulub asteroid hit Earth a long time ago, which actually brings up more Iridium. When that asteroid hit, it left the soil with Iridium-enriched environments, to the point where a lot of people went there to try to get Iridium and then process it. Well, just like the Garganta one, another area you could get Iridium, but at the same time, this might have something to do with the asteroid and examining it. People speculate that the creatures in this game are from some parasite that might have been on that asteroid, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later when I actually specifically talk about the enemies. For now though, we just want to know that this is in the Yucatan Peninsula, this is where that asteroid landed, and there's a lot of Iridium in the surrounding area. As for emails, we don't have an actual email, but we do have a sort of report in a way. This one right here you can see on screen was in April 15th, 2049, so a bit before the Garganta ones occurred. Again, I will summarize it. If you want to read all of it, pause here. But it talks about a massive 9.8 earthquake that hit the Gulf of Mexico, causing a lot of chaos, and the epicenter was located northeast of the Meridia in the Yucatan Peninsula, despite no previous seismic activity in the area. For those who don't know how earthquakes work or operate, they don't appear out of the blue. Seismic activity can be detected with the machinery we have in current day. So it's easy to be able to tell an earthquake might be occurring here, and we can even go to as far as telling how powerful it might be, where it might occur, and when it might occur. So the fact that one occurred where this facility was being built or had already been fully built, and that's the epicenter, is a bit of a weird thing. Why was there no activity? Simple answer to this wasn't a natural earthquake. Something that happened at the peninsula or where the facility was caused this earthquake to occur. And not just some minor earthquake either. This is a 9.8 earthquake, which is massive. This is a deadly and powerful earthquake. The question though is, was it caused due to construction happening in that facility? Or did something go wrong, like a gigantic explosion, and that explosion is what caused the earthquake to occur? The explosion might also explain why the facility looks like it's in such ruins and why there's so many what looks like explosions in the walls everywhere. But at the same time, it's hard to make a jump to that logic due to the fact that since this did happen before the Garganta ones, you'd think that there would be some mentioning of it in those emails. The other thing is, one of the previous emails talked about how if they did discover stuff at Garganta, they would focus their attention at the Yucatan one. Which also makes you think if an explosion happened that destroyed stuff, probably again would have been mentioned, or at least there would be some concern with the fact that they're building a new one, and yet nothing is being talked about with the old one and what happened to it. So I believe this might have occurred during construction, and not after construction was finished. I've mentioned Iridium a few times, both with the Yucatan and the Garganta facility. Why though? Well, I think Iridium has a major importance in the story of GTFO. After all, there's quite a bit of it mentioned. If you play through R3, A1, and D1, then you may notice that those monitors around the area talk about a bunch of information, but the constant between all of them is Iridium. I took screenshots of quite a few of them as I went through and made a spreadsheet which will be on screen here that you can take a look at. Now, a lot of it seems to be randomly generated every single time, but it follows a similar pattern of the research number of what they're researching, where it was found, what's classified as, and how much it weighs. Or maybe it's a small shrub, an herb, a plant, or in some cases it says something like something that is similar to a plant, meaning it's not actually a plant, but something very similar to it. Could this be maybe something that was brought by the asteroids? After all of these things that were documented were found in that area. You can also see radiation readings are nominal on all of them. The Iridium ppm, which for those who don't know, that means part per million, which the very basic way of it is you need 10,000 ppm to make up 1% of a substance. So the fact that the highest we see across the board here is around 50, none of these things had more than 1% iridium in them. So it's not a ton, but it's still a fair amount according to what they wanted. Finally, you can also see material composition, and again, every single one of them has iridium in it, as well as some unidentified compounds or stuff similar to graphite, undiscovered carbon-based biomass, unrecognized crystalline solid, some type of metal alloy. This is in the year 2050 or so. This is not in the past where the periodic table hasn't been fully filled out, meaning this is stuff that has not been discovered in world or in real world Earth, and we could probably assume a lot of this stuff is not stuff that actually exists in real life. This is purely by the game logic. But also in facilities we can see stuff in testing containers, that moss that grows and going across the floor, the weird plants we see everywhere. Could this be some of it? I believe it is, and that's why they're examining it and studying so much of it. There's unknown stuff in it. Not only is there iridium, but there's also other things inside of it, stuff that hasn't been discovered yet. Now, I think also when it comes to iridium, they were probably using it and processing it. After all, you can use Iridium to make electrical cables, or at least high-powered, heat-resistant ones. You can make tools that can also resist heat, which could be very useful for when building very far underground. And you can also make a metal alloy with platinum and iridium that is very corrosive resistant, which could also be very nice when building these complexes. But I'm a bit unsure about the building part due to the fact that probably they weren't using the iridium when building them in the first place. However, I do think the iridium might have another use. Those syringes we see in A1 and D1, is it possible those have iridium in them? We have another email, which is right here, that you can see between CJ Mortimer and Scott Weaver in a completely unknown year that talks about the syringes. Again, pause it if you want to read it, but the basic summary is talking about how he's improving it, but he can't make it better because the side effects tend to get really, really bad if he does. Also with the health one, it's completely random with what happens with the side effects and he can't determine what causes it. Could this be iridium? In-game, when we give ourselves syringes, we get infection from it. And we don't really know what infection is. I believe it might be iridium poisoning. After all, iridium in real life, too much exposure to it or long periods of exposure over time just chip away at your health, make you incredibly sick, and do or will eventually kill you. It's sort of a similar thing with the syringes. We give ourselves a little bit and it's not too much infection, but we give ourselves more and our infection starts to skyrocket. And infection eventually does not kill us, but it gets us to the point of death at about 1% HP if we hit 99% infection. Could this be iridium poisoning? The flaw with this logic though is how does that account for the spitters? Are the spitters basically things that are infused with iridium and that's why they give us infection? Or what about the infectious gas? Is that just normal air that's been poisoned by iridium? It's hard to say and we have no answers to it, but it's an interesting theory that I thought I would bring up. But that's why I think iridium has a lot of importance. The fact that they are using so much stuff that requires iridium and there's so much testing on stuff that has iridium in it. There are a few more emails I want to talk about before I get sort of to current day of what our characters are and what's the point of them. Back in Rundown 3, you're able to find a sort of conspiracy email. This one is between Anders Johansson and Jansen Davies. Again, Jansen Davies appearing for the third time in an email. So this is an important person, or at least somebody who gets contacted a decent amount. The year is also 2050. Now, the summary of this one is there's an illegal radio station that's talking about Dreyfus Industries, has an inside source, and Anders is willing to deal with it, but he has to make a deal with Jansen. I'll talk a little bit about the Dreyfus thing in a moment. There's a bit of an interesting thing at the bottom there next to Anders' name. B035. Where did we see that before? Right next to the other person who was talking quite a bit in the previous emails, Andrew Clinton. They both have B035 in their name. Could this be some sort of ranking in the work facility? Think of it as like SCP, if you know that. There's different levels of clearance where people, the higher the clearance, the more they had access to around the facility and the more permissions they had. Could this be a similar thing? And if so, this turns into blackmail all of a sudden. It's a bit of a stretch, but look at it this way. Both of these people seem to be talking to Jansen A001 as sort of a boss, or at least Andrew was talking as if Jansen was his boss. So if that is the case, then Anders would also sort of be in that position where he would work under Jansen. So why is it that he's saying you and I have to make a deal for this? Is it because he doesn't honestly care or he can bail out of the situation stuff gets hairy? Or is he trying to move up the work ladder by saying to somebody who's in higher power than him, you need to make a deal with me in order for me to deal with this person for you who's causing you a bunch of annoyance? Keep that in mind because that might actually be the case. And if we see more emails in the future with these numbers and letters after people's names, then maybe we can sort of figure out who the higher ups are and who are more the common peasant workers in this. As for the audio log that follows, This is everything that the radio station host was talking about when it comes to Dreyfus Industries, and I'll let it play here.
You're listening to State of Truth AM. If you're a new listener, let me say, welcome to the Enlightenment. But let me take a moment here to set things up for you. Now, we know, you know, that they are hiding things from us, right? The press, the mainstream media, they're all a part of something big, you know, a bigger picture. The lies run deep. And if you're not listening to State of Truth, you're only hearing their side of the story, got it? You are being spoon-fed lies and deceit, and they will tell you whatever is needed to pacify you, to keep you in the dark. Mushrooms, right? Keep them in the dark and feed them bullshit. Well, not today. Today, you woke up, friend. We broadcast the truth at State of Truth. And if they shut us down, we'll move and start again, and they are trying to stop us. Rest assured of that. There is a concerted effort to keep the truth from you. A global conspiracy designed to keep you oppressed and hold back the truth. Well, we don't play that game at State of Truth. We're going to be taking calls here in a minute, and the lines are open to anyone. Today I want to hear from you if you have information about Dreyfus Industries. Now these guys, they have their hand in everything, right? That microwave you're using to make popcorn was made by Dreyfus. How about that bowl you put in the microwave? Where was it made? China? You know who works with the Chinese government? Dreyfus Industries. How about the popcorn itself? Take a look at the packaging. What does it say? Does it say Agra Global Food Supplies? If so, you know who that is, right? Dreyfus Industries. That's right, they're in everything. And right now, they're in you, whether you like it or not. Okay, so the lines are open, and I am waiting for your calls. The resistance starts today, people. Call now.
There's quite a bit of information there, and I honestly think this piece of information might be one of the biggest lore bits we got in this rundown. But I'll summarize a little bit of it. To start off, it's this guy talking about how Dreyfus Industries, a new company name, is hiding stuff. They're telling the public lies and deceit, and they're basically trying to keep them in the dark. Sort of how these facilities were being kept in the dark and the common public wasn't really told about them. It then goes on to proceed about how they're involved in everything. Dreyfus Industry has their hands in pretty much everything around the world, from manufacturing to business to everything. And now they're involved with people. This brings up a few questions and quite a few theories, but I'll only talk about a little bit of it. First off, Dreyfus Industries. Remember earlier how I said there must be money coming in to build these facilities? Dreyfus is probably where that money is coming from. After all, if they have their hands in pretty much everything around the world, including the Chinese government and then maybe even more governments, they're probably making quite a bit of dough. Enough to be able to actually build these billion or trillion dollar facilities and pay the workers to actually do this stuff. Also, they have enough power to make sure that people around the world don't figure out about them. The really interesting part though is at the end when it says they're in everything and now they're in you. Does this mean that they're experimenting with people, or maybe they're experimenting with their products that could affect people? The reason I say this is an old book series I used to read called Maximum Ride had a similar thing where a company owned pretty much everything around the world and used that power to pretty much kill off half of the population, using it with a disease or poison basically in their products to kill people. If we can assume correctly that this company or this facility is using like the Iridium and stuff to test syringes or byproducts and stuff, what's to say maybe they aren't testing it on people by putting in everyday products like food and that people are consuming? It's really far-fetched and I have very little to actually attach that to with what is fact, but I figured I'd mention it because I do think there's a lot of potential for lore and theories from this piece of information. But that's really all there is to this voice and all of the stuff that went on here. Now let's jump to current day, where we, the players, show up. We don't know the year, or at least I don't believe we know the year from live research, but we can assume this is in the future as for the fact that these facilities are completely abandoned. But what are we doing? What's our goal? Or rather, what's the Warden's goal? We know very little about the Warden or what he wants to achieve. All we know is up to this point, pretty much every single level and every rundown has led to us grabbing this neonate and putting it into a neural network and getting that whole set up. But why? What is it in rundown 4, the data center, are we going to be trying to achieve now? We don't know. And I've probably said that by about 20 times throughout this video of just we don't know, but it just goes to show there's a lot of blank space in the lore and there's really no answers to stuff. However, another little bit of a theory that I've crafted is something about our willingness to do this. If you remember, every time we drop down into a level, there's always that text that appears. And there's 4 of them that really caught my attention above the rest. The first one being rundown 2, C2. It says, I can't take this any longer. I'm not taking another step. Not one. Now, keep in mind, this was the error alarm stage back in rundown 2, the level where as soon as you loaded in, an alarm was going off. But we'll come back to that once we've looked at all 4 of them. R3B1 has this. Wait, what could the Warden possibly do with this? Do you really want to know? It's showing the prisoner saying, what could he even want with this? What is the point? Why are we doing this? What is the point of what we're doing down here? Followed by somebody who's just basically saying, I don't care. And do you really want to know? Then in B2, we have, are we really putting it in that thing? Just shut up and get on with it already. Again, reluctance. Just, are we really going to be doing this? Followed by, once again, one of the other people saying, shut up, I don't care, do it. But then finally, in R3D1, we have, we shouldn't do this. It feels wrong. We have no choice. Going towards, again, another person saying we really shouldn't be doing this. It doesn't feel like we're doing the right thing, but then instead of somebody saying, shut up, just do it, it's another prisoner saying, reluctantly, we have no choice. We have to do this. This goes to show that our prisoners are sort of not wanting to do what they're told. They want to stop doing this. They feel like it's just not morally correct to be doing what the Warden's asking you to do. But the main reason I want to bring this up is C2 and D1. Back in C2, these text audio logs we get, these are supposed to be some of the final things these prisoners said before they died. Something that's supposed to, quote, help us get a better understanding of the level. Well, with C2, this was the error alarm stage. I like to think of it as this wasn't just a natural thing where the alarm was always going off in this area. I like to think of it as if the Warden himself did it. This is a little bit out there and it's really aggressive, I guess, when it comes to theory crafting, but I don't like to think of it as in a person saying, I can't take it anymore. I can't keep running. I'm too tired. I have to stop. I'm just gonna let myself die. No, it's him saying, I can't take this any longer. I can't take doing what the Warden wants us to do. And then there at the end, not one in full caps. A way of saying basically shouting you're not doing it anymore. That's not something you would do if you're completely exhausted and you're falling over dead and just going to let the things kill you. That's something you do when you're defying it. And then a sudden noise goes off, screams, and then unintelligible. A sudden noise perhaps being the alarm going off, screams being the enemies that were alerted because of it, unintelligible with people screaming and shouting as they're getting killed. I believe this is the Warden setting off the alarm as a way of saying, no, you do what I tell you to do, and if you disobey me, I kill you. Or I will do something to force you to move forward, otherwise you die. And then D1 from Rundown 3. Same thing. We shouldn't do this. It feels wrong. We have no choice. We have to do this. But reluctancy. And then another error alarm. The second level where an error alarm goes off as soon as you spawn into the game. It's a bit weird. The 2 times we really see the prisoners say, no, we're not going to do it anymore. And those are the 2 levels with an error alarm that is basically the game's way of saying, nah, you got to get moving, go forward. I think this might help also lead to the identity of the Warden. Would a group of people be willing to do this? Yes, you could argue maybe they're very corrupt, but even in the most corrupt of groups, there's always that 1 or 2 people who have a conscience who decide we shouldn't be doing this to people. Is it a single person who is okay, who is so far gone that he can live with the decision of, I'm going to murder these people just to get what I want done? Or is it an AI who doesn't give a crap and just sees you as a tool that he gets to use, and if you don't do what he wants you to do, he simply replaces you with another person, and he doesn't care and there's no remorse because it's artificial intelligence? I'll let you guys decide. I've got many theories about each one, but I'm not going to state them here. But this sort of goes to show that we're not completely willing to do this, and the Warden doesn't really have an issue of trying to motivate us, just in a bit of a harsh way. And finally, what about the creatures? Probably the most confusing bit of the lore behind everything in this game is, what are they, how did they get here, and what's their goal? Well, when it comes to what are they, some sort of parasite perhaps. It could have been in the plants that had so much iridium in them. Maybe it was an experimentation with iridium to try to make like a health syringe for somebody, and it went wrong and it mutated them into what they are. Or like a lot of people say, it's probably the parasite from the asteroid and it just infected stuff. We don't really know the answer to that. We know these things were tested on though. With the images here in the background footage, you can see these creatures in these facilities being tested on, in chambers where they can be watched without being in danger. The plants everywhere being tested on. Heck, you can even see just how weird some of them are, like a striker being attached to what looks like a birther sac that's all shriveled up. It's clear that whatever these things were, when they were created or when they became a thing initially, they were contained. They were something that were definitely being contained by the facility and studied. It was not they broke out and immediately unleashed havoc upon everybody. But what did happen? Did it get out of control? Did they become more powerful than they could have imagined? What about the black blob in the C1 level where the chargers appear? That's what I've been nicknamed as the infection, but what is it? It's the same skin tone as the chargers and has appeared on every level they appear on, but how are they tied together? How do enemies mutate from one to another? We see humans turning into these things, so it's safe to assume that there is some sort of parasite that turns people into these creatures. There's also the birther that has been shown to birth more of them, so obviously they can reproduce by themselves. But there's just so much we don't know, and unfortunately we will not know until at least maybe the next rundown or the rundown afterwards. Because as of right now, the game gives us no definitive answers for pretty much any of this. However, there's one thing I do think we might have an answer to, which is what their goal is. And simply put, nothing. I don't think these creatures have a goal. Their goal isn't to kill people and eat them. Their goal isn't to mass produce or like world conquering. No. Every time we find them, they're sleeping peacefully. No, as peaceful as they get, but they're sleeping. They're not trying to actively find people to kill them. Albeit maybe the scout, you can argue, but what if the scout is more so a defender? Not somebody who's trying to find people, but trying to defend those in the area. After all, its pathing works how it passed in between the enemies that are still alive. It's a defender. Somebody who, if they detect a threat or unknown thing, they alert everybody so that they are aware of the threat and then calls in reinforcements. It's not trying to find you, it's trying to protect the strikers and sleepers and everything that's still alive. These things don't want to actively kill us. They want to remain peaceful. The issue though is we're going down there and we're disrupting them, which causes them to become aggressive and want to kill us. Or is it maybe they're fighting back in self-defense because they see us as a threat? Are they smart? Are they stupid? I don't know, but I do believe they don't have an ultimate goal. I think they just exist to exist, sort of like a plant does. The plant grows and then eventually dies. These enemies grow, maybe produce more, repopulate, but they die over time. Or at least we like to think maybe they die over time. But where does that leave us overall with all the lore and all the story? What's our ultimate goal, or what's the Warden's ultimate goal? What does the outside world look like? Is it also corrupted like it is down there? Are these things everywhere on the surface? Or is this an issue that is only down there in the facilities? Does the rest of the world live its life just like how it normally would, with no clue as to what is going on down below? There are many questions, and in all honesty, Rundown 3 left me with more questions than it gave me answers. But that is everything I have for you guys today. There was a lot of information there, a bit of a long lore video, but after all, I was talking about everything from the alpha rundown up to Rundown 3. So 5 total rundowns I had to talk about the lore and all my theories. But I want to hear what you think. Do you agree with what I've stated? Do you disagree? Do you have your own interesting theories? Or is there information that I just didn't see or left out that might actually shine some new light on something we thought was in the dark before? Write down in the comments anything you have. This is a theory video, one of the only theory videos I've actually seen on YouTube, and the only one that goes in depth like this. Yes, there's a GTFO Discord where you can talk about theories too, but talk about it down here. I'd love to see what you guys have to say and what you believe might be the story behind this game, and who knows, maybe some of us are a bit more accurate than we might think we are. This game is an open book and there's still plenty of lore to be written before the conclusion finally arrives. But I'm excited to see what 10 Chambers holds for the future, not only gameplay wise, but story wise. Once again, I'm sorry this video took so long, a lot of issues. I think this is now my 5th time recording this entire video and praying to God there's no issue at the end of it. But it was a lot of fun putting this video together, and I can't wait to put together another lore video in the future when we get Rundown 4, which undoubtedly will have even more lore inside of it. But I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you want to become part of the community that I'm building here on YouTube, and if you just want to get notified as to when I post my next video. I also do have a Twitter account which I will link in the description. I don't plan on doing too much with Twitter just because I'm not huge into social media, but of course over time I'll grow more into it, and if there's anything I ever want to share that I've discovered about the game or just anything about it in general that I don't want to turn into its own video because it only would take like a minute, you'll find it there. Because who knows, I might discover more. I keep playing these levels over and over again. I'm sure to run into something after a while that I may have missed, and I'll tweet about it there. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll see you all next time. Stay safe and have a good day.